I'll be making a long skirt with a full lining. So I folded my fabric into two using the largest part of my body divided by 4. The largest part of my body is the hip. Divided by 4, I have 9.5. Then I added 2 inches to it. So that is what I folded here. Cutting out the front part first. So I'm taking my waist measurement divided by 4. I have 7.5 inches. Then I'll add 1 inch for my darts and another 1 inch for my sewing allowance. I'll be attaching 2 inches of band to this skirt. So to take my vertical measurement, I'm going to remove my 2 inches here to take my measurement. So I'll be taking my hip line. My hip line is 10 inches. So on this 10 inches, I'll take my hip measurement. My hip divided by 4 is 9.5. Then I'll add 1 inch for my sewing allowance. So here is my hip line. So I'll be going up by 2 inches for my upper hip. I'll go up by 2 inches here. Then I'll still take the same measurement I took here. I have 9.5 plus 1 inch. This is to avoid bulge around your hip, okay? Then I'm going to connect this point to my waist. If you have a hip curve, make use of it at this point. I'll connect it. Then this line is straight. I'm going to take my knee measurement. From my waist to my knee is 23 inches. This is 23 inches. Then I'll go up with about 3 to 4 inches. I went up by 3 inches. So whatever I have around my hip, so I'll minus 1.5 from it. I have 10.5 here. So I'll minus 1.5 inch and I'll be having 9 inches. So this is my knee. Then you connect it to your hip line. It's best to use your hip curve. My skirt length is 40 inches. Here is 40 inches. Then I'll add 1.5 inch to it and I'll be having 41.5. That is my 41.5. Then I'm going to place my hip measurements there. My hip measurements, remember, is 10.5. So I'm going to place exactly 10.5 here. Then I'll connect it to my knee. And we are done for the front. So before I cut out the waist, I'm going to add 1/2 inch. This is to attach it to your band. I'll add 1/2 inch before cutting out the waist. I'm going to cut out the back. I've folded my fabric. So the difference is just the zipper allowance. So I'll be taking 1 inch for my zipper allowance. I'll extend these lines to the zipper allowance. Here is the knee line. Here is the hip, and here is the upper hip. You go up by 2, and I also mark the upper hip. So at the waist here, I'm going in by 0.75. At the knee here, you go in by half an inch. I'm going to connect it to my upper hip, from my waist to the upper hip. Then from my knee to my hip. Then you blend this part. From my knee, I'm still going to maintain the half inch to my skirt length. Before you cut out the side here, make sure you replace that inch you took away from the waist. We took away 0.75. You replace it at the waist here. And at the knee, you took away 0.5. You replace it here. So you connect from the waist to the upper hip. Here is the upper hip. Connect it to the waist like this. Then from your knee, you connect it to your hip. Then you follow your 0.5 to your skirt length. And cut out. So I'll be minusing 2.5 inches from the lining because of the folding at the hem. 2.5 inches. I'll fold it inside before cutting out my lining. My dart is 3.5. I use my nipple to nipple divide by 2 for my dart. 3.5. I'll be adding half inch to it, and I have 4 inches. So from my zipper line, I'll take 4 inches. Then my dart length is 5 inches. Remember, we added 1 inch for our dart, so I'll be taking half inch on both sides. Then I'll connect. So I'll do the same thing for the front and the linings too. So I've sewn all my darts. I want to contour the front, so I'll go down by half an inch. If you have a bigger tummy, you can make use of 1 inch. Then I'll connect it straight to my side seam. You can use your curve ruler. So because I want to make the finishing very neat, I'll be joining the fabric and the lining separately. So here is the back with an opening for the zip. So I'll attach my zip now at this point. I'll be marking 6 inches for my zip since we'll be attaching a band to it. If you are not attaching a band to it, you can make use of 8 inches. But because of our band, I'll be making use of 6 inches for my zip. Remember, we left 1 inch for our zipper allowance. So that is what we are going to use to attach your zip. So this is the back. I've attached my zip and I've closed up the center back to get to my knee. Your knee, for your slit, you are going to take your exact knee measurement, not the one we went up by 3 inches. Your exact knee measurement. Then if you want your slit to be more open, then you can go up by 2 or 3 inches, depending on how open you want your slit to be. So for me, I went up with just 1 inches from my actual hip measurement. It shouldn't be below your knee, so it will enable you to walk very well. So I did same thing for the lining. So here is my zip opening. I left it open for now and I stopped at my knee. So I'm going to sew the lining separately, then sew the main fabric separately. I've joined the side seams together, the main fabric and the lining. I did the same thing. So the zipper area is still open for the lining and the slits are still open. Okay, so what we are going to do, this is the wrong side of the lining. What we are going to do, just open up the hem of the main fabric. This is the hem and this is the right side, and you place the hem of the lining, the right side facing the right side, the right side facing the right side, and you sew with 1/2 inch. So I top stitch to the part that has the lining, but if you don't want to top stitch, you can trim out the excess. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to push in the lining inside. Here is the lining. So arrange it very well before you close up your zip allowance for your lining. First, I'm going to close up my zip allowance for my lining. So here is my zip allowance for my lining. It's still open. Here is the right side of my lining, the right side. So you are going to place it like this on the zip. Then you are sewing from here. Make sure you maintain your 1 inch. You'll be sewing from here. Then when you turn it, you have a neat finishing. You have something like this. You have something like this. Here is what I have. So next is to close our slit at the back. So to sew the slit, I'm going to start with this side. Okay, since I'm starting with this side, I'll bring out the fabric from here. Bring it out like this. Then I'm going to start sewing my slit from where I stopped here. I'm going to start sewing my slit from here. Okay, make sure this point meets. You place it like this. Then you sew. Don't start from the hem to sew. You're starting from here. If you want, you can pin them together. I'll be sewing with 1 inch from this point. So I've sewn one of the slits, so I'm going to turn it. Let's see how it looks like. So to sew the other side, I'm going to bring out the fabric from the other side too. So we'll do the same thing we did for the other side. Make sure this point meets. Then start sewing from here. So you sew with 1 inch. I've sewn the second one. I'm going to bring it out. Here is the back. You see how neat it's looking. So the waist is still open. We'll be using our waistband to finish it up. To cut out our band, because I don't want this video to be too long, so I'll cut the band off camera and iron it. So what you do is you measure 5 inches from here to here, 5 inches. Then you iron in half an inch. You iron the other side half an inch. Then you fold into 2 again and you iron. And the length of your band depends on your waist. Make sure you add about 2 inches for the length of your band. Here is my band. So you can add interfacing to yours. So it's either you fix it in between your skirt like this and sew, or you fix it from the back. You open up one side of it, the bigger side is facing you. You sew with half inch. After sewing with half inch all round, you fold again and top stitch to the front. And top stitch to the front. So these are the 2 ways you can attach, you can fix your band. But I'll be sewing my band once. I'll be sewing my band once. First thing I'll do, I'll stitch here. I'll stitch here, I'll turn the back and stitch here, then turn it to the right side. So I'll turn it over like this. Then I'll push it inside with half inch and sew. When I get to the other end, I'm going to leave about 1 inch for the hook of the skirt. So I'm going to push in half inch and sew. You can pin before sewing. So I stopped here and I left about 1.5 inch. So I'm going to flip it the other side and sew to have a neat finishing. So I'll sew to have a very neat finishing. So I'm going to close this opening here. I'm going to follow this line and close it up. So what I'm going to do next is to sew in my skirt. Is it iron hook? This one will be this other side, while the hook will be on the longer side. This one will be on top like this. The hook will be under. And when you sew, you have something like this. Okay. What you are going to be seeing next is the final look of this skirt. So after sewing in my hook, I'm going to iron this skirt. Then I'll show you the final look. Here is my final look after ironing. And this is the inside. This is the inside. Here is my seamless skirt.